Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and you're following the 3 H's of the channel. In this video, I have an encounter from Scotland that's just plain creepy. After that is a father and son fishing trip that takes a very bizarre turn. And we follow up with somebody who had emailed into the channel before. She has had a problem with crawlers on her property. And finally, there seems to be something underneath the forest in Florida. If that sounds like anything you're interested in, pull up a stump and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. I live in Scotland, and I used to work for the forestry. One day at work, me and a couple guys were there to clear an old country path because there were loads of trees that had grown over it. It was in the middle of the winter, and absolutely freezing, so we were doing a pretty bad job of it, and just generally screwing about. We had walked maybe a mile or so away from the group that we were with, when something happened. We heard this absolutely blood-curdling guttural screech that was in the trees just ahead of us. Of course, it freaked us out, but we decided that we should check it out anyways because maybe somebody was hurt and extremely injured. So myself, Joe, and Craig, the guys I was with, walked out into the trees. I noticed some blood on the ground, so we decided to follow it. Eventually, it led to this little clearing with a few trees in it. There was literally blood everywhere. It was up the trees, on the ground. Never in my life have I ever seen something like this. And then, up in one of the trees was a severed deer head. And since it was so cold, there was actually steam coming off this thing. By this time, we were really freaking out. And then, we hear that same screech, somewhere off in the distance, but still uncomfortably close. We started running down the road toward our forestry van, and then we got the hell out of there. To this day, I have no idea what could have ever done that. There aren't any big predators in Scotland. There's nothing here that could have beheaded a deer and then got it up a tree. It still freaks me out even now. My dad and I went on this fishing trip one time in Dilley, Texas. It was at some river called Frio in the middle of nowhere. To get to our fishing spot, it was like a 20 to 30 minute walk in the woods. The river would cut through it at some points too. When night fell, my dad turned on our lantern, and we pretty much sat there in the middle of the forest with just my pellet gun, our fishing gear, and our rods cast out, and the lantern. I never realized before I started reading all these scary stories on the internet just how quiet the forest can get when something else is around. Now, from behind us, I hear something. It sounds like a faint group of laughter, children's laughter. My heart dropped to my stomach. My dad and I jerk our heads and stared at each other for a second. Then my dad says, "Did you hear that?" The only words I could muster were, "Kids laughing." He clenched his lips and nodded. Not a word from either one of us was said the entire night, trying to hear what the hell was out there. Even the fishing was slow, which was weird considering all the action that's usually going on at night. And we kept hearing children's laughter all night from varying directions. I was about 16 at the time, and I'm 35 now. And I still remember those kids laughing, clear as day. And what really gets me is that after all these stories I've read, and how these things, whatever you call them, crawlers, skinwalkers, other names, that they mimic the things that they hear, so I can't help but thinking that whatever the hell was out there was mimicking the sound of what it heard last, and the sound that may draw us out to look for it. These days, after a bunch of other things over the years, I consider myself a witness to the weirdness of the wilderness, but I hope that there could be some explanation for it, but I don't think there is. And this next one comes from someone who has emailed into the channel before. Her name is Anne, and she's had experiences with crawlers that I've covered on the channel. The other day, I got another email from Anne about some new goings-on that have been happening on her property. This email reads, "Hi Tim, I hope all is well. I just wanted to touch base with you and give you an update on what's been going on around here. So, it was a pretty quiet summer. Nothing strange occurred and no new sightings. And we even started seeing some deer again. I thought maybe it had moved on. Well, about a month ago, my daughter and I were sitting on the front porch. It was probably 11 o'clock at night, and we were just talking and enjoying one of the last warm nights before the cold settles in, and I felt comfortable enough for us to be out, because as I said, we hadn't seen or experienced anything, and the deer coming back around had made me think that it had moved on. Well, we're sitting there and we're just talking, and I glance over to the field, and I see a crawler running across the field, but it's not alone. It was being chased. I'm not going to say for 100% certain that it was being chased by a dogman because it was night and I couldn't see perfectly, but I will say that whatever was chasing it started off on 2 legs, and it was tall, probably 6 to 7 feet, and its coat was a dark color, but I couldn't see what color specifically. I could just tell that it was dark. It looked canine-esque to me, and even more so, that it dropped down to all fours and continued the chase. It wasn't a long encounter because they're both pretty freaking fast. Then last week, I woke up at 3 a.m. to someone yelling, "What the F is that?" And then I heard a bunch of gunshots. Lane came running into my room because it woke her up too, and she was scared. I obviously didn't want to go out and investigate. That same morning, when her dad came to pick her up for school, her dad said that he saw 2 mutilated deer carcasses in the farthest part of the field. He drives by there to get to my house from his. I don't know for certain what killed those deer, or what the person was yelling and shooting at, but I'm guessing that it was either the crawler or the dogman. I was talking to my friend Joe in Texas, who's a cryptid hunter, and he said that he's heard some stories about dogmen going after crawlers before, and that they seem to be enemies. And I wanted to ask if you had heard anyone else have a similar experience. Are dogmen and crawlers natural enemies? Did the crawler being here attract the dogman? I can tell you that it never felt like we were in danger during our sighting, because it was laser focused on the crawler and didn't really seem to pay any attention to anyone else. Any insight at all would be appreciated. So of course, I have to ask all of you, have any of you heard any stories about dogmen going after crawlers? Have you heard any stories about crawlers attracting dogmen? And are they enemies? Personally, I don't remember what kind of podcast it was on, and I feel like it was right around the time of COVID, I think, that I had heard a podcast where somebody was having run-ins with crawlers, and then dogmen came and killed the crawlers. But I don't remember any details of the story, nor do I remember what podcast it was or what episode it was. But I've also seen people comment sometimes on videos saying that dogmen and crawlers are enemies, and that dogmen will always go after crawlers. And I think I've even seen some people say that, quote, dogmen will eat a crawler for lunch. But personally, I don't know a whole lot about how they interact with each other, or really why they're after each other. So I ended my response email by saying that I would put it out to everybody who views the channel. What do you think is going on here? And I also said that I'm glad that things were going normally, or as normally as they should have been, for at least a while. And the email ends with Anne saying that she's heavily considering moving because she's just about over having to deal with this. She says it's the wetlands, and with that I tend to agree. Wetlands seem to be, for some reason, places where very weird things happen. It seems to be the place where a lot of these stories take place, actually. And not just with crawlers, but with Bigfoot, with any other cryptid you can really think of. A lot of times it takes place out in the woods or near a wetland, so there might be some kind of connection there. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on all of this because I'm clearly not. I'm just kind of coming up with ideas. So of course, I leave it all to you. What do you think is going on at Anne's property? I'm sure Anne will be reading the comments, and I'll be down there too, so let us know. Usually, I don't talk about my spooky or messed up experiences with anyone at all, but this one's a little extra, so I figured I'd share it. Here goes. There's a little bit of context that's needed beforehand. For the past 5 years or so, I've been getting increasingly more interested in the folklore around my area. This is in South Florida, somewhere around there. So this interest is of course focused on where I live, but it's more of a general interest that became that way over time. A couple of years back, me and my grandpa decided to go camping at a forest that was relatively close to our houses to go hunting. I was preparing a few last-minute things that I had to pack up and put them in the car, and then my grandpa gets all serious and kind of sits me down. He says, "Before we go, I have to tell you something." I said, "Oh, what's that?" He said, "There's talk about something underneath the forest. At night, it wakes up and starts breathing slowly. The trees sway up and down as if it breathes in and out." And something about what he said that still gets me. To this day, I genuinely don't know if he believed that or if he was just trying to spook me at the time. Anyways, we finish packing and get our stuff together, and we leave without any further stories. I was bored in the passenger seat listening to the radio, and then suddenly he goes, "Listen, we must not make too much noise at night either." I said, "Why's that, Gramps? Is it the wildlife? Bears?" "The soil might listen. It could notice that we're on it." I get tired of this vague BS, and I say, "Gramps, what the hell are you talking about?" I wish I could have said it like that, but it was probably much more polite and respectful. He says, "You haven't heard the news, have you?" I'm thinking, this old coot, what the hell is he going to tell me now? He says, "Recently one of the locals found cracks in the ground near his property, which is neighboring this forest." Now, I can't decipher what's true and what isn't, but I say, it could have been literally anything, Gramps. Maybe the soil got too dry and cracked. He said, "The cracks were too large to be anything like that." We're silent the rest of the ride. Finally, we get to the hunting spot. It was a really long drive. My bladder felt like it was on fire. The entrance is surrounded by this old metal or barbed wire fence. It's a couple of minutes before sunset, and to be honest, the whole place looked dead. I say, "Are you sure this is the right place?" He says, "Why? Did I scare you?" I don't say anything further, and we start unpacking our gear. I start looking around for a good flat spot to set up camp. I notice some odd terrain in the corner of my eye. I say, "Hey Gramps, come look at this." He immediately says, "It's those same gaps. I told you I wasn't lying." This really unsettled me, but his snarky attitude was enough to make me forget about it. We continue trekking the dense jungle and notice more of those weird bumps and cracks. I still can't describe this to people. They almost resembled like overcooked loaves of bread. And after some more time, it was getting late and we still hadn't found a good enough spot. I was still wondering if he was intentionally stalling for time to creep me out. Eventually, he found a spot that he liked. He said, "It's right this way." And I was thinking, man, it better be. He directs me to a small patch of flatlands that are surrounded by some dense trees and tall grass. I say, "Is it here?" He says, "Of course it's here. Start setting up your tent. Don't make too much noise." And at this point in my head, I was just thinking, Lord have mercy. After some more time, we finish setting up, and we're both really tired. I decide to hop in the tent and start resting for tomorrow. I close my eyes, and I doze off. I have no clue what my grandfather is doing during this time, but I'm praying to God that he's in his tent as well. Around midnight, I hear my name being called. I don't think I responded the first few times, but he didn't stop calling me until I woke up. I said, "What is it?" He said, "Do you feel that?" I said, "Feel what?" But as I was waiting for something to happen, I'm still not sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me or something else, but it felt like that something was definitely trembling across our area. He said, "Stay in your place and don't move until I tell you to." I said, "Gramps, what did you do?" He responds and says, "Stay calm, just whisper. If you scream like that, it won't stop." And then I could feel the tent bobbing up and down. It wasn't brute like an earthquake. It was almost softer. I'm still not sure how to explain this feeling. It stayed like this for almost an hour. I lost track of time because of my sheer bewilderment. I tried to fall asleep through all of this, and I pass it off as a dream, but I struggled to fall asleep. It feels like ages when it finally stops. I realized that it's already about 4 or 5 in the morning. I still lay there for a while. I take some time to stretch, to crack my knuckles and all that. As I step out of the tent, my hands were still trembling, and I was sweating like a pig. My grandpa says, "You look like you just stepped off the roller coaster, son." And my entire thought process at that point was, I'm getting real sick of your shit, Grandpa. I take my flask and I pour out all the water onto my face. It took a while to get adjusted to standing up. I felt like vomiting for some reason. Gramps had brought out his little lawn chair. He was reading a small book. I don't remember what it was. He says to me, "Go wash off all that sweat. There's a small creek in the west. Don't get lost." I say, "You're not going to lead me there?" He says, "You smell terrible. Please go wash it off. We're going hunting, remember?" I don't know if he was intentionally acting calmly to mess with me even more. I honestly didn't even care then. I was still processing what had happened, I guess. I grabbed some bottled water and I drank it halfway. It was really warm, but I didn't think much of it. I started walking in the direction that Gramps told me to. Personally, I didn't feel the need to bathe. I think I just wanted something to do, to get my mind off of the weirdness of the night before. As I walked further in, I didn't notice a lot of animals, mainly just some bugs and some birds. They probably all fled because of the weird trembling. I thought, what are we going to hunt now? I could hear the creek in the distance when I caught something off to the side, a freakishly long patch of trees that had fallen from their bases and onto the ground. The more I looked at it, the more I thought, what am I looking at? They didn't look like they just fell down. They looked like they were uprooted from the base. I walk away and cross down to the creek. I wash off for a while, making sure that I took as long as possible so I didn't have to walk back that path again. I recall that it took me a long while to find my way back to camp. When I got there, Gramps was already trying to shoot down some birds with his rifle. He says, "What took you so long?" I said, "I got lost." He said, "Can't you tell directions apart? Come on, grab your rifle." With all the weirdness and the way he was acting, I was nearly at my breaking point, but I thought, screw it. Maybe going hunting would keep my mind off it. I pick up my rifle and I load a mag into it. I take some extras with me. He says, "Okay, follow close behind. I know a good spot." I say, "All the animals have run off now. A lot of the trees have been toppled regardless, so we can't move through the forest." He says, "Yes, but not the spot that I have in mind." This really worried me, as he had mentioned that the trembling happened throughout the entire forest. We took some more extra supplies and left. It was getting late. We spent a very long time walking, and I was extremely fatigued. I said, "Gramps, are you sure that this is the way? It's getting darker." And he says, "Can you please stop complaining? We're close. Calm down." After what felt like days, we finally arrived. I couldn't believe my eyes. While the rest of the forest looked like a wasteland, This specific place looked pristine, as if the trembling had never touched it. From what I can remember, the soil even felt different, much more spongy and hollow, as if it was more moist than usual. To my surprise, there were some white-tailed deer resting in a vacant spot. My grandpa said, "I told you. Now settle down and start planning your shot. They're all together, so we have to be careful." I was hesitant to shoot first. I told him that my hands were too shaky, but he insisted that I go first. I decided to pick off the farthest away from the group. I held down the trigger and shot. The rest of the flock ran away as expected, but I saw something odd in the spot where I shot. My grandpa said, "It looks like you missed. Let's go after the rest of the group." I ignored him, and I walked over to the spot where my bullet hit. To this day, me and Gramps still have no idea what we found in that spot. There was a mass of black roots inching its way out of the hole that the bullet punched through. I don't remember very clearly what happened next, but I'll try to summarize it as best I can. There seemed to be some kind of black mass that squirmed inward from the hole. It almost looked like a big pile of worms or maggots, but I'm positive that it was neither of those things. We heard some shuffling coming from the surrounding grassland. We didn't get a good look at the movement because it was pitch black, but we knew that it couldn't be good. He said, "Forget it. Let's pack our stuff and just leave." This time, I didn't hesitate to listen to him. We rushed through the path and back to camp. I could feel the trembling starting beneath us. He said, "Son, don't look back. Just keep moving forward." I could hear the trees violently rising behind me. I have a very difficult time describing it, but it almost sounded like being in the middle of a bamboo forest. I tripped on a log in the middle of our path. I thought I was about to die to whatever this thing is when Gramps grabs my hand. I stand back up and we pick up the pace again. I can see our lanterns in the distance. The camp was bobbing up and down in sync with the trees behind us, roots cracking all the way. He said, "Forget the camp. Run straight through and just pick up your lantern." At this point, I was thinking of doing that anyways, and I could care less about our supplies, so I agreed with him on that. I make a rush to the car, squinting in the dark so I didn't trip on anything again. It was getting louder, like it was mad at us or something. I'm not sure if it was, but in my mind, it was. Finally, I get back to the car and throw myself inside. Gramps turns the ignition on, and we get out of there. The entire drive to the nearest town is completely silent. We refuel at the gas station, and we decide to spend the night in this tiny motel. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I caught myself experiencing the same effects as last time. And then I realized that Grandpa has not spoken a word to me since we got back to the car. It's been years since this happened. I've been looking around on the internet, trying to figure out anything that this could have been, but there's no concrete explanation of it so far. Does anyone have any ideas? So of course, if you enjoyed all of those and you have some advice for Anne, be sure to comment down below to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. If you want to support the channel, there's of course links in the description. There's memberships and super thanks here on YouTube, as well as the new hype feature. I hope you all had a happy Halloween, and I hope that you will join me on Friday for the Leaf Podcast, and then again on Sunday for another video. So until then, I'll see you in that video. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. Have a good week.